There we go. And so if you have to leave early
Right.
or there's any issues with, whatever, if you just have to go to the bathroom at some point during our session, do not worry. We will send you a recorded copy of the webinar
And
today.
can they share that?
I think so. Yes, I think so. And I think all the recordings are available on our website.
Okay.
And they're definitely on our YouTube channel. So we're going to begin today a little differently. And first of all, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Shannon Miller. I'm with the Miller Elder Law Firm, and I am an attorney.
And my name is Star Bradbury with Senior Living Strategies, and I have 24 years experience in the senior living industry.
And amazing book writer. You guys haven't seen her new book. It is.
Thank you, Shannon.
Of course.
I'm going to save this for the last, but here we go.
We'll do it at the beginning and at the end. The nice thing about Star's book is that it really is a great resource for people walking through things with your parents, also for yourself.
Yeah.
So we actually give it to all of our clients coming into the life care planning model.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, we really love the book.
It makes
Great
me
resource.
happy to hear that because I spent so much time writing the book. Because I'm really passionate about helping people make educated and informed decisions. And as I'd like to say, you just don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
But how can you ask the right questions if you don't know what to ask?
Yes.
That's why we're doing this.
Yep.
Here's our first question.
Yeah, so here's the poll. We want you guys to answer this question. And it is, there it is on the screen. Who makes the decision to where you will be discharged after a 72-hour hospital admission? So that basically is the question.
Just think about it.
And there's 4 options that should come up on your screen. Is it your doctor?
Right.
Is it your discharged social worker? Is it you, the patient? Or is it your healthcare surrogate decision maker or family? So pick one of those 4. We're gonna put up the poll results in just a bit to see how you guys did with that. And it is a little bit of a trick question.
Heads up. But we're gonna discuss why it's a little bit of a trick question. And by the time we're done, you will know, haha, okay, I get it.
Yes.
Don't worry, we won't leave you hanging.
And it's interesting, I think, walking through all this, and this is why I think it's really nice to have a lawyer and someone who's just been in the healthcare and, senior living community for so long, that we have different perspectives. So there's really like the law version,
Right.
and then there's practically what happens day to day.
It's my 24 years in senior living. I used to be the healthcare administrator of assisted living and also memory care. And then I worked in a life care community for over 18 years. And I've literally, we talked to maybe thousands of families as they go through the process of, what I like to call it is making a plan to age successfully.
Yeah. And so it's nice because these 2 perspectives are very different. What might be the legal requirement in application doesn't fly.
Right.
So, what we're here to do is to try and educate you guys. What are some of the legal aspects of senior living? And then, of course, what is the practical application of some of that stuff?
And you need both.
Yeah.
And because different things apply in different situations.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we would hope that the law comes down to the law.
Yeah.
But knowing the questions and knowing how to maneuver is important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's close our poll and see what the results of that first survey.
I'm really curious.
Yeah, I am too. Let's see how people came out with that. Oh, here we go. So most people, it looks like 13%
Love it.
said it was the doctor.
Mhm.
Discharged social worker 19%, you the patient 61%, your healthcare decision maker 6%.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, that's great. So let's talk about that a little bit, Star, and you start with that.
Okay. First of all, believe it or not, your doctor rarely has anything to do with where you go. It just doesn't fall under his, I guess the best way to put it is job description. He's going to deliver the care you need, but once you're being discharged from a hospital, he may make a suggestion, but even that's rare. He's really leaving it up to the
discharged social worker.
Right.
But is the discharged social worker, like, let's run through what can happen. So we're gonna tell you about a typical scenario. You go to the hospital because you broke a hip. you've had your surgery,
Had a fall,
right, and they're ready to discharge you.
usually
Okay.
to rehab.
Usually to a rehab facility.
Mhm.
And so, you've gotten, on your feet a little bit, you've gotten a little PT in the hospital, the discharge social worker comes to you and says,
We want you to do a little more rehab. We don't feel that you're really ready to go home. To which my advice on the aside is always accept rehab. It's always better to do more than you need so that you don't go home and fail
Right.
or fall, both. I said fail and fall.
Right.
So take that rehab. But usually what they do is they'll say, here's this facility is available and this, it might give you two choices.
right,
And so you feel as the patient or the family member, that's your options. Those are your choices.
Right.
Rarely do people know they could say, hold on.
no.
I don't want my loved one to go there.
Yeah.
Can we consider over here? Can we consider someplace else? Now, they may not like that answer, but really?
Yeah,
Ultimately, and this was the reason why we said it's a trick question, because so many people feel, well, don't I have to listen to the discharge
yeah,
planner?
there
Right?
is a lot of pressure.
And there is pressure, but believe me, Shannon and I are telling you, you can say no. Now,
Yes.
Shannon, here's the other part though.
Right.
How long can you say no?
Well, eventually, so your legal right is, of course, the patient always gets to make this decision, ultimately. You can say, I'm not going to those two facilities, but sometimes if somebody is in a situation where they really can't make those decisions because they're not capable from a capacity perspective, or their healthcare surrogate has been playing an active role, and that patient is comfortable with the healthcare surrogate making those decisions, that's another reason why we might see that healthcare decision maker, family
True.
member, healthcare proxy, making those medical placement decisions. But the other thing that, really should happen is you gotta do your own research. You've gotta,
Absolutely critical.
you gotta find out which facilities are well rated, which facilities, go there. If you're a healthcare surrogate, go there. If you're a family member, you're trying to find a good placement, go and do a bunch of research related to that facility. What's the staff to patient ratio?
Right,
When you go there, if you go on the weekend,
right.
is there somebody at the front? Are people
Are they
signing in?
helpful? Are
Yeah.
they communicative? And the best thing about going on the weekends is that's when most families visit. We know that. And so you have unfiltered information by chatting with the family members that are there.
Do it in the parking lot. Do it in the parking lot.
How long
You're
has
scared
your
to do it in the facility.
How long has your mom been there?
Yeah. Are you happy? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But let's back up a minute. What I want to say is for those of you, I'm guessing that of those people watching this morning, they could be here because they're interested in educating themselves, or you may be caring for or concerned about aging parents, either way.
Yes.
And so if there's one thing we could stress is, and I know you're thinking, really? But I'd like to just say, if you think that you're going to be needing, or your family member might be needing rehab or assisted living or skilled nursing, check it out before the crisis so
Yeah.
that you're not in a position going, well, I don't know if I should say yes to the discharge planner's suggestions of this place or this place. You don't want to say yes and then find out, I wish I hadn't said that. It's pretty hard to back that decision up. You want to make sure that the discharge is the right to the facility is the right one.
Right, and I would also look at reviews, and we know that sometimes administrations change. And sometimes a facility that was really good, like in our office, we have, a list. We have the top 5 facilities, we have the bottom 5 facilities.
And it changes.
And it changes, and it's
Over
usually
time.
based on us going to visit, seeing how the patient to staff ratio is, what is the quality of care? Do we know any of our clients that got bed sores? Or do we know that their care plan meeting is being implemented by staff? I mean, there's certain things that we see inside the facility, so we do keep that internal list.
And
Now-
you can't assume won't change year
Right.
to year.
Yep.
I've seen facilities that were at the bottom
Right.
rise to the top.
Yeah.
And so you need to educate yourself and ask a lot of questions.
And one of the things that you and I talked a little bit about, Star, was, this idea of who owns and operates and manages a
boy.
facility or a community.
Mhm.
And let's kind of expand the the base of senior living facilities, before we
Absolutely.
jump into that.
Mhm.
So
What are we
ju-
talking about?
we just talked about rehab bed,
But that's
right?
one.
That's just one type of facility. What other type of facilities for senior living are out there?
Well, there's a lot, and really what we're talking about is assisted living. And within the assisted living umbrella, you have memory care. And after that, you would have skilled nursing, long-term care, which might be a rehab facility. Most rehab facilities have short-term rehab beds that are focused on physical therapy, occupational therapy, returning that patient to independent living, ideally.
Yeah,
Ideally, right? But the time may come where either you feel, I need more help than being able to stay in my home.
right.
Well, what are you going to consider? Assisted living, where you have assistance with activities of daily living. And if you're not familiar with assisted living, I have a whole chapter on what is assisted living and who gets accepted and who isn't, and what does it cost in my book.
Yeah,
But those are when we say long-term care or facilities,
yeah.
we're talking about a much broader perspective.
Yeah, so, I always kind of characterize the facilities, we start at the lowest end, right? So age in place. Then we might
Right.
move to independent living, where basically you're an independent, you're in your own apartment, but you might have options for community events. You might have options for
Dining,
dining.
transportation,
If you fall down, if you're in independent living, like at the village,
Mhm.
you push a button,
security.
they come and get you, they pick you back up.
Mhm.
So independent living is amazing, and I love
And
it.
that's what I call a full service retirement community, not
Right.
just another place to live. The advantages of a full service
Yeah.
retirement community, and I do refer people to the village, is
Yeah,
that you have a support system. You have 24-hour security. If you're tired of cooking, they have great food. If you
yeah,
need a nurse or you want events or a gym or
yeah.
clubs and organizations, that is a full service community.
Well, and the atrium is another independent living
Mhm.
option. It's a little bit less expensive. It may not have quite as many bells and whistles, but they also have really good food. And they also have a whole range of options for an independent living setting.
You just have to go out there and look.
Yeah,
And it was one thing I've learned living in Gainesville as long as I
yeah,
have. Please don't listen to your neighbor. I don't assume that they know what you don't know.
yeah,
And there's so many myths about so many communities.
yeah.
And really, the only way you're gonna know is go visit these communities with yourself. And my advice is, if you're looking for a loved one, go by yourself first.
Right.
Check it out yourself
Yeah,
first.
form your own opinion.
Don't try to take your mom or your dad who might have mobility
Oh, I see.
issues or
Yeah.
who's tired. On every single tour of every single facility, just narrow it down and go to one or two.
So that's a couple of independent living facilities. On the same level as that, we also have in our area, Okamic, which is a CCRC,
Mhm.
continuing care
Retirement
community.
Also called, more recently,
Oh,
the state has changed that, but a life care community.
Oh, right.
But they're the same, just so you
Yeah.
know. CCRC, continuing care retirement community, or a life care community.
and one of the nice things about that is you move from each type of
Independent
placement.
living, in and out of
Assisted
rehab
living,
or assisted,
And
memory
then
care.
all the way into a long-term care bed.
Skilled.
So a nursing home level of care.
Right.
And so what we know about those kinds of places, it's great, but it can be quite costly.
It
And
is.
you will have to enter into a substantial contract and commitment to staying in a facility like that. We don't wanna get too in the weeds about
We could
that.
do an entire webinar and
We
good
could,
on life care communities.
yes, but that is our first level, right? So independent living, then we move up to assisted living, which again is a lot more help. We're gonna have every meal prepared. There's gonna be somebody checking on you. You're gonna get shower service. You're going to, have a higher level of engagement with staff.
And it's really for someone who needs assistance with, again, ADLs, activities of daily living. And you might say, well, like what? I mean, this is not someone who's ill or needs skilled nursing. They just need a little help
Yeah,
to maintain their independence, such as, maybe I need help dressing. Maybe I need a
Yes.
little help bathing. The big one is help with managing your medications. It's just gotten too confusing to track your meds during the day.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things assisted living can do. You have your own apartment, furnish it yourself.
Yeah, and some of them are quite
Mhm.
substantial. I mean,
Yeah.
we see some relatively large assisted living. We don't need to go into all the facilities that are available in town, but there are a number of them. And so, you know, the other thing that we haven't talked about is checking the ACA website for complaints. So Agency for Healthcare Administration.
Agency for Healthcare Administration,
Yeah.
shortened ACA.
Right,
And that is the state agency in Florida that oversees a long list of healthcare facilities, including skilled nursing, assisted living, even home and companion care. There's a lot of strict regulations
Yeah.
that all of these facilities have to comply with. And the state does surveys to sort of come in, surprise, we're here.
yeah,
And to do
Right.
a survey every few years to see how are they doing? So you can look and ask for those results.
yes.
How did you do on that last survey? Could I see those survey
Or you
results?
can just look on the ACA
can look on the
website and
ACA
see if
website.
there have been any complaints.
I would
from
do
it.
that.
That's silly. The other, okay, so we talked assisted living, memory care units are going to usually be a lockdown unit, and there's going to be a program in place in that facility to assist people with neurocognitive deficits.
And I like to say, that for memory care, Shannon, you're more than pleasantly confused.
Yeah,
You might be wandering away. So when Shannon says lockdown, another way to say that is it's secure. People that are in memory care need a high level of help.
yeah,
They're at risk for wandering, and so it's a secure neighborhood that they can't just come in and out of. So that might be appropriate for your loved one.
yeah.
Mhm.
So we hit on assisted living, we
Mhm.
hit on memory care. The highest level of care, of course,
Yeah.
is skilled nursing,
Mhm.
nursing
Long-term.
home level of care, long-term care bed, right? And so we have a number of facilities in town. We don't want to go into the specifics on all of them, but they're completely different from each other.
They are.
Some of them have kind of a suite setup with, and I mean suites like 2 bedrooms
Mhm.
sharing a bathroom. Some you're.
Semi-private room,
Yeah, some you're
Mhm.
not gonna be in
not
private
an
room.
apartment.
And some of them, you know, we're going to see, you know, differences between the facilities, so it's important to check it out. And I know we're kind of dragging, oh, okay. So those are the different types of facilities, but I see there's a question in the chat. So I'm gonna go ahead and just read that aloud. And as you guys have questions about topics that we're hitting on, feel free to drop a question in. So this is from anonymous attendee, and what they've said is, we did our this was related to the poll question and the discharge from a hospital. We did our due diligence, chose an ALF, only to have the ALF turn us down, stating our family was too high acuity, right?
Mhm.
Yet the NF, I'm assuming that's like the hospital, stated our family member did not meet medical significant, as the nursing home facility stated our family member did not meet medical necessity for a nursing home level of care. Thoughts?
Mhm.
Okay, that's an excellent, you know.
It is.
And so I'll take the first stab at this. Yeah, you might choose an ALF and they might look at something in your medical records
Mhm.
and determine that their facility doesn't have the ability to address the level of care needs that they might seem would be necessary in the medical records. Like, for example, some, you know, assisted livings are not going to allow like a trach, or they may
Right.
not allow someone who is on a feeding tube. They may have certain
Or
criteria.
any open wounds of any
Right.
kind that require dressing changes. And please understand, this is not necessarily the individual assisted living facility saying, we're just choosing not to take that person. There is a very strict regulations in place that would cost them their license if they took somebody whose needs they can't meet.
Right,
And there's a form through an admission process that has to be filled out where they can assess, can I meet this person's needs or not? One quick thing that you should know is that not all ALFs are the same. Their licensing is not the same. So there's a basic assisted living license where you can help with those ADLs, but some assisted living facilities, and this is really important to note, have something called an ECC license, which is an extended congregate care license. And I can tell you right now that not all assisted living facilities in Gainesville have that ECC license, extended congregate care, that allows a specific assisted living facility to accept patients that are a slightly higher acuity.
Yeah.
That need a little more care.
Sure.
My advice is try to find an assisted living facility that has that extra license, because that means your loved one will not be asked to move if they exceed this criteria. They can keep them longer or even accept them. So don't assume that just because one assisted living turned you down, that another one won't.
And I would also encourage you that if the nursing home facility stated our family member didn't meet medical necessity for that level of care, that may also be something to look around for. So you may say like that particular facility didn't assess this person to meet that level of care, but that doesn't mean that another level of care nursing home facility wouldn't accept our patient. And honestly, sometimes those assessments are different. Like one facility may say, we really think that we could help this person, you know? Like there's one facility that we love, it's the Ayers in Trenton, everybody loves the Ayers in Trenton. But they do kind of a, you know, like they have someone who just manages recreation. So it's if we have a client who's very engaged, they're an extrovert, and they're gonna wanna know that their birthday's being celebrated. The Ayers is a great placement for them because it's just got that vibe
It's
of
more
like,
family style.
right?
And
Yeah.
part of that has to do with staff that stays.
Right.
Staff that builds a community.
Yeah.
If there's constant turnover, and that gets us back to a critical question that we started with before we kind of went into our description of different facilities, and that is it important when you go and check out any facility to see how much turnover? And I'm not talking about staff at this point. I am saying one of the critical questions that you want to ask is, are you owned and managed by the same company?
Right.
And how much turnover has there been in the last few years? You want to ask, has your facility been sold or purchased by anybody new in the last few years? And if so, how often? How many times? I've seen assisted living facilities in this town, I'm sorry to say, that have been bought and changed hands three times in the last few years.
Yeah, I know the facility you're talking about.
Know,
and let me just say one thing with that too.
Not a good sign.
When you're writing those checks to that facility and you've been kind of told like, this money is going to go for my care. And then you find out that this facility is actually in a receivership.
Right.
And so there's definitely dollars that are going to something other than just your care. You know, that should be a red flag to you, that maybe this is a little shaky on the financial side. You know.
And if they say, oh, we're owned by such and such a company.
Right.
Then the next question is, great, does that company also manage the facility? Because a lot of companies, real estate investment trusts will buy huge blocks of facilities and they don't really care, some of them, they'll just hire a different management company. But the management company doesn't have control over whether the carpets are replaced or the food budget is cut. So in a perfect world, it would be not for profit.
Yes.
Owned and managed by the same company. And there's a few to choose from that are well run in this town.
Yeah.
And that's a critical question.
Well, and the not-for-profit status cannot be understated. That if you can find a facility that's a not-for-profit, what that means is that they are putting the money that they earn back into the community. Yes, it's great. So
instead of trying to please that bottom line for their
like right.
You know, and
kind of a no-brainer if you can buy that.
Sit here and tell you that every for-profit is not good.
No,
that's just
there's
not true.
Excellent for-profit.
You know, but the owned and managed is I think
critical.
Important to ask. And then, so the other question is, great, somebody else is managing it. How often has the management company changed?
Okay, yeah. Let me jump to some of these questions that we're seeing now. What type of care is assistance with medication management and dinner? They can do breakfast and lunch, bathe on their own. Is that independent with add-ons? And I would say you know, independent living, if you have somebody who comes around, you know, usually you'll see in a lot of the facilities that are independent, they will have like almost like a home health care
on site
that can come through and help with those types of issues. And it's going to be a lot less expensive if that's, you know, if that's the goal, is to kind of be on a budget, then, that those types of setups with independent living add as much in-home care as you can afford. And that's going to provide a good quality of life for our person. But when that balance shifts,
Right.
recognizing that the assisted living is maybe gonna provide a lot more attention, a lot more hands-on, but you can create a progression there. I can tell you, my grandmother, she came to Florida at 95. She was at the Village for 5 years. We kept helpers. In addition, she moved to assisted living during that 5 years, from independent living to assisted living. We added helpers. And then when it got to be too much, we moved to a nursing home level of care. So, I mean, she lived to be 102. So that was, yeah.
Which is not unusual.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she died during the pandemic because basically we couldn't go and see her every day anymore. I know, it was so sad.
I've heard that story
so many times. But 7 years of moving through this progression. So it is important for us to understand what are the different options available, and that you can stay in a lower level of care, but do some of those add-ons to keep you in that independent setting. And that seems to feel really good.
And
they don't want to move.
Let me clarify one thing.
Yeah.
So if you went to the Village, or you went to Okemik or the Atrium,
sure.
and you were in independent living, but you still needed help with, you know, first of all of those communities, every single one of them has a full, robust dining program. So that takes relieves you from cooking and shopping and managing that aspect of your life. And that's a huge relief, and that could make a big difference. Where oh my God, people get sick of cooking. Some of the women I talk to.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, medication management would be provided not as part of the services in independent living, but as Shannon says, to clarify, you can hire somebody through home care, whether they're on site or not, to come and assist you with medication management. And now there's so many options on the market for managing medications and helping you, assisting you to stay on a medication regimen. Because there's two reasons people end up in the hospital. The highest reason, and that's medication mismanagement, undertaking, overtaking, not staying on a critical regimen, and poor nutrition and hydration.
Hydration, UTIs.
Yep.
Okay. Yes. And let's talk, again, let's just jump to this question. How can I know if my chosen facility is owned by one of the plundering hedge funds, or during my stay, my facility has been purchased by the same? That's an excellent question.
It is.
Star?
Well, I know this sounds like so simple, but if you haven't moved into the facility and you're touring, I always tell people, if you haven't visited a community at least 3 times before making any decisions, you have not visited enough. And I would say maybe even more. Remember, if you're someone helping an elderly person, you're checking all of this out first. If you're a person who's considering moving yourself, I'm assuming if you're talking about independent living, you can go and ask all of these touring questions, and you're going to see a critical list, a checklist that we worked on together and that we're sending out to go through. And one of those questions are, who owns you? How long have they owned you? And then you're going to write down the exact name of the corporation, and you're going to say, how could I find out more information about this company? Because it won't be hard. You will go online and put in blah, blah, blah corporation, and you'll see that they're the largest owner of a zillion million assisted living facilities or communities, and that you still got to dig.
Yeah.
You still got to dig a little more. Then you could say, and I told people this all the time, how are you doing financially? Could I see any financial paperwork that says that you're financially stable?
Yes.
You can ask for that kind of information. You do have to be willing. Yes, I know you're saying, oh my, but there's no other way around it. How often have they been sold? Who's running them now? Who's managing them now? And how long has the healthcare administrator been there, or the director of nursing?
Yeah, these are great questions. Now, I sense a bit of overwhelm from Richard. Richard's like, look, this is too much information to absorb. Please send the book. We can do that, Richard. You can go on Amazon and order the book yourself.
It's on any major website.
But one of the things that I want to stress to everybody, and I know, like, this is why we started the life care planning model.
Yes.
It's because of the overwhelm, right? There are experts that exist. We have an elder care coordinator who can help walk you through these issues. So you don't have to be the one to like figure everything
Right.
out. What are the best facilities in Gainesville? What are the worst facilities? You know, how do we get our 100 days of Medicare? Like, we have a program that can actually help you guys or help your parents or help your loved ones with that process. But here's the suggestion, really. If that's not something that you're interested in, and this is just a tip for picking senior facilities, do the best you can. Just don't pick the one that somebody says is the good one. Do a little bit of research.
I agree, and I know that it can be overwhelming. I mean, that is why I wrote the book, Navigating Your Senior Years. People said, well, why did you write it for the adult children? You know, because it's parents. But I can tell you that there's probably more people that are seniors themselves that buy the book, read it themselves, buy it for their children, and then I say a little prayer. Yes, that's great. But have a meeting with your adult children or anyone that's in your support team that you're going to be counting on. Anybody on your support team could benefit from reading that book, because it does guide you and give you some of this information that we just can't compress into a one-time webinar.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, there are just a few important things that we should talk about related to, you know, what kind of facility is appropriate for you, right? So we kind of hit on that a little bit, but let's talk now about, let's just quickly go through some of the, and actually, I think that May just sent out
The checklist.
the checklist. And so we have a general checklist that we just sent out to people that is not as specific as you'll find in Star's book or on her website. But the senior facility checklist that we just sent out is just some general questions. You guys can see it's just one page that kind of walks through some of the things that you might want to ask when you're touring a facility or doing your research on a facility.
And one thing I want to say is, let's say you're just not sure what your future holds. I mean, are any of us really? No. So you're trying to look at what your options are. And you may be thinking, you know, I could see that in a few years, it might be great to move to a community, or I can see that I'm needing more and more help. Maybe I need assisted living. You can get on the wait list. Ask all of these people about a wait list so that you're on their radar. And that they're gonna call you, and you said you're interested in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we have one overlooking the lake or whatever. You know, it doesn't mean that you're making a decision. And most of these wait lists, even if they have some sort of deposit, it's refundable. So don't think that exploring communities means that you're moving to them. I like to tell people it doesn't. All you're doing are looking at your options, and you're educating yourself. And you're getting on, I know people who are on like 6 wait lists. They knew they weren't going to go to 6 places.
Yeah. And on that, so I know that a lot of you on here are like, I can't afford, you know, some of the costs of these facilities.
True.
And honestly, that ends up being one of the reasons that people age in place. They may be in a, you know, 2-story house. They may have stairs on the downstairs level. It may be very, very challenging for them as they age to age in place. And they may also have a lot of stuff. This seems to be another thing that people can't seem to part with their stuff. And that also is a blocker. And there's ways for us to deal with your stuff. We have some senior community storage facilities and organizers who can help you walk through that process. And they're very good at that. In our community, we're lucky that way. But let's talk about the cost of these things.
Yes, because it can be shocking. Well, first of all, let's just get the big elephant on the table, and that is who pays for long-term care. And maybe this is news for some of you. But what I want to say is that for assisted living, Medicare does not pay for assisted living. For extended long-term care, you've done with your rehab, your PT, your OT, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and they're saying you need long-term skilled nursing. Medicare doesn't pay for that either.
Right.
So what does it pay for? Your short-term PT and OT.
100 days.
100 days. That's it.
At the most.
At the most.
Right.
Usually it's less.
Usually it's less, but you know, we can do a whole webinar on that.
So you need to be thinking about, if I were to need assisted living or skilled nursing long term, how would I pay for that? how am I gonna pay for it,
And there is a Medicaid program, it's called Medicaid waiver,
right?
that does provide some service,
True.
basically a little bit of money that gets paid to the facility. You would still be required to pay your own room and board
But it
expense.
could make the difference to making
Yeah.
it feasible financially.
Yep. So that is one, that is one payment option, is Medicaid waiver can offset some of the costs. You would still be required to pay for room and board. Medicaid long-term care is a totally different
Different thing.
program.
Mhm.
And the Med Waiver program, they do also have HCBS, which provides home community-based service. And that can be done in the home, but both of those types of Med Waiver programs actually have a wait list. And depending, this gets more in the weeds, but depending on where you land on the wait list, what your ranking is, you may not even qualify for the wait list. So, they may just flat out tell you, you don't even get on the wait list, but even if you're on the wait list, sometimes people sit on the wait list for 3 months to 2 years, believe it or not. So, depending on where you are, that can be a real detriment. So Med Waiver has, some money, but it's very
Florida is
challenging.
underfunded,
Yeah, it's very challenging.
very underfunded, other states.
Yeah,
And if you're out there thinking, well, maybe I should move closer to my adult child or my sister or family member, before you make those moves, look and see how that state funds any kind of assistance for paying for long-term care. It's vastly different,
Yeah.
vastly different. And I just want to throw a couple more things out to you. If you are wondering what care costs, whether it's home care, assisted, whether it's skilled nursing, and you're checking or comparing different parts of the country, go to the Genworth Cost of Care Survey. Genworth, Genworth, Cost of Care Survey, online, and you can put in a zip code anywhere in the United States and look at the median cost of all of these different kinds of care, whether it's home care. So that may be useful to you. And the other thing is our local elder options 800 number that is a free service under the federal government, and vastly informative on assisted living facilities and home care. And if you qualify, it can help you find out if you qualify for free services.
So just to kind of wrap up a little bit, Star, what is the cost of care for
Thank you.
a
Getting me
typical,
back on track. I'm so
for
sorry.
a typical, independent living,
Okay.
lower end, higher end, typical assisted living, lower end, higher end?
So let's start with independent living. And again, there's a pretty big difference, but if you're basically paying a monthly fee for your dining and your housekeeping and some services, and there's always a list of the services included. Right. And that's probably gonna range anywhere from about 3,000 to, let's say, 5,000 or 6,000, maybe more. Part of it depends on how big is your apartment.
Yeah.
How big is your home?
Yeah.
How many services are wrapped in? Does it include or not include utilities? So that's for independent living.
Yep.
For assisted living in Gainesville, and this is very current, it's gonna be somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 a month.
Right.
That's for assisted living. Think of that as more or less, lots and lots of services, lots and lots of help.
Memory care?
Memory care is gonna be more. Memory care is gonna be more like 6,000 to 7,000, maybe even more. Why?
8,000.
Again, 8,000, I
Yeah.
thought so. Those services are very high for someone who needs help with everything in their life.
And nursing home level of
Oh,
care,
boy. Okay.
13, right now, it's running, there's one facility that's lower, but generally
14,000?
13 to 16,000.
Oh,
We got a
wow.
$16,000 bill recently.
Yeah, for a
So,
private room.
well, no,
No?
semi-private,
Really?
yes.
Okay, well,
Semi-private,
you're bringing me up to date.
it's
Okay.
horrible. I saw the bill and I was
that's why
shocked.
you pay, folks.
Right.
I mean,
So-
unless you have a long-term care insurance plan or a healthcare annuity or a long-term care annuity that also pays for that's kind of a hybrid policy that's life insurance and long-term care.
So let's talk about Medicaid long-term care. So Medicaid does cover, we talked about the Med Waiver program, which covers some ALFs and some home-based community service, so HBCS, which would be home care. But again, even the services that are provided are very limited. You have to get on a wait list. You may or may not qualify because depending on your level of need and the assistance that you receive in the community. But Medicaid long-term care is actually quite good in Florida. It's not hard to qualify. We've done a whole nother webinar just on qualification for Medicaid, but especially for a married couple, there are so many techniques that we can use to get somebody qualified for Medicaid, because we don't have to impoverish the community spouse in Florida. So, and family members aren't required to, you know, pay for the services of their parents. Spouses are not required
Right.
to pay for the services of their spouses. So we have a lot of tools to help people get qualified for Medicaid if they reach that nursing home level of care and can't afford that $13,000 to $16,000 a month for, you know, nursing home level
And who
care.
can,
No one,
honestly,
honestly.
nobody
Yeah.
can. So if you're out there and you're thinking, well, I'm never gonna qualify for Medicaid, think again. And if you're saying, well, that's only for people who are impoverished, who live in poverty, that's not me. I'm not even gonna consider that. There's a stigma about even considering Medicaid. And I would like to plead with you, anybody out there, do not make assumptions. Do not say I'll never, because there are so many people that falling through the cracks financially because of the expense,
Mhm.
that they should be looking ahead and going, I might really need some help here. I
Yeah.
might need some Medicaid help. And so come and talk to Shannon or educate yourself
Yeah,
on
we help.
Medicaid options and whether it's something you could be planning for in the next few years.
Okay, so let's come back to the questions, because we've got quite a few in the chat and we're running out of time. All right, so. Okay. Who is on the hook financially in a situation in which a healthcare surrogate or other fiduciary in good faith, but mistakenly signs the paperwork for admission of a loved one without capacity, like an agent under power of attorney? And I'm looking at the camera here. I'm assuming that's what you mean, as an agent under power of attorney, or maybe a designated healthcare surrogate. In the individual's name, even if facility has copies of the fiduciary's healthcare surrogate or other fiduciary documents, or is otherwise aware of the person's status as a fiduciary for the loved one being admitted to the facility. Who is on the hook financially? So it depends how you signed, and it also depends what the contract required. So, you know, I'd encourage you to look at the contract carefully. When you sign as an agent under power of attorney, you always want to sign your name, put a comma, as agent for, and then put the person's
Correct.
name who you're acting as the agent for, because then that person becomes the financially responsible party. Now, if the contract itself required some sort of guarantor on the payment and you signed as a guarantor, of course, even though you may have signed the contract itself as an agent under power of attorney, you may also be financially responsible as you signed as guarantor. And that is something really important. If you go to a facility and you're urgent about needing our person to be placed, and they give you an iPad and they say, you have to sign everything on this iPad in order for us to admit her, you know, that is not okay.
It's a red flag.
So you need to say, I'd like you to print it out for me, or
Right.
even ask for it before you go to the admission. I need a copy of the contract ahead of time to see what it includes. One of the things that I love to look for in these contracts, which is not great for us, is mandatory arbitration agreements. And mandatory arbitration agreements, they also require you to use something called AAA, which is not always even attorneys who are the arbitrators in these agreements. So, you know, we don't like mandatory arbitration clauses. If you have a paper form that you can X things out, then that makes doing the contract, you can actually go through and eliminate things like being the guarantor, having mandatory arbitration agreements. There are certain things that you can do. And of course, you can always have attorneys review those contracts, but I know most people are like, I can't afford that. I get it. Read it. Try to understand it. Look on the internet. What do these provisions mean? So that you're not locking yourself into
Take it
something
to
that's
someone
not
who
needed.
may not be an attorney, but is familiar with these kinds of contracts, or
Yeah.
it says, look, I can help you. I can help you
Yeah.
go through this contract, because everything Shannon said is important. And if there was one little tiny piece of advice, is don't ever sign a contract the day they hand it to you, or the day you want to be, there's going to be a contract. And one of the questions on the checklist is ask for any contracts or agreements that you might be signing printed out that you can take home and read and make sure you understand what you're signing. So can't stress that enough.
Yeah, and so we're a little over time, but I wanna go ahead and wrap up. You know, just by kind of talking once again about Star's book, it's really good. I also just want to, you know, let you guys know if there is a need for Medicaid long-term care. Of course, our office provides that service. If there is a need for, you know, really kind of the whole package, one of the things that we do with the life care planning model is we do your estate planning, we do exploitation protection, we do healthcare advocacy, which may include things like telling you guys it might be time for hospice. We have an elder care coordinator who sits on staff. We actually have two of them now.
Wonderful.
Amazing case managers. They're fantastic. So that may be something else that you guys want to think about. But I think this has been really informative, Star. I know this information can be a little overwhelming. I encourage you to get the book.
We understand it,
Yeah.
and it's hard, you know, we're both so passionate about what we do, and
Love
we
it.
wanna help you so much that, we know we're throwing a lot of information your way. But I guess my message is hang in there, give yourself a pat on the back for coming today and attending and trying to educate yourself.
Yes.
It's complicated. We just took a tremendous long list and compressed it and tried to, you know,
Yeah.
share this with you, but the good news is that you can leisurely read this book over hours and underline it and write questions, and it really covers a lot of the basics about navigating the complex world of senior
Yes.
living, senior healthcare. If you could make it simpler, we would,
We
but
would.
given my 24 years in senior living and all her legal experience, we know it isn't. And
Yeah.
so what we want to do is help you, inform you.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, one of the things that I think I've learned a lot in just being with families during this stage in their lives is that families, when we get to this end of life stage, become the caregivers. They become the, you know, ones to change wounds. They become, you know, getting mom or dad to the doctor and to the bathroom and to the shower. And what happens when that stuff happens is we are no longer the daughter, the spouse. We just become like a full-time caregiver. And that in and of itself creates a not so great quality of life, not just for our patient, but for their family. And there are tools to allow you to get back to your family. It's called accepting help, knowing what
Accepting
resources are available to you. And sometimes that can include a senior living facility.
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that, because in my many years of experience, there's always sort of a resistance. I'm just gonna stay
Yes,
at
I
home.
can do it.
But I guess I can tell you that one of the things we learned from COVID is how loneliness and being isolated
Yes.
or becoming less and less connected to your community affects you, and none of it is good.
Yeah,
And
failure
so
to
the-
thrive. It
you know,
happens in babies and it happens in
Yeah.
people who are left alone in nursing home facilities.
Yeah, and so it's a,
Yeah.
is it a compromise? Yes, we're not sitting here telling you that it's not. But I would like to suggest that people think about how can I maintain my independence for the longest possible time? That's principle number one in my book, that your decisions are based on maintaining your independence and thinking things through differently to maintain your independence.
Yeah. Okay,
One last thing,
yeah,
visit my website, www.starbradbury.com. I have resources across the top with a long list of questions to ask when touring any senior facility.
give us that website one more time, Star.
It's www.starbradbury.com. And I built that resource
Okay, put
list.
it in the chat.
Thank you. I built that resource list to give you questions to ask, really home care, home health care, life care, full service retirement communities, assisted living, memory care. What questions to ask when you're touring? A lot of that information is in my book, and the checklists are on my website. So avail yourself of that.
Yeah. Okay, be on the lookout for that checklist. Be on the lookout for the link to the webinar. Feel free to share with your friends. And I'm Shannon Miller with the Miller Elder Law Firm.
Star Bradbury, Senior Living Strategies.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.